6:01, and I think I'm going to go ahead and get us started, and people will trickle in. So let me go ahead and welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elizabeth Drembus, and I'm the genealogist for the William and Mary Bray School Lab. In service to the Bray School Lab's mission to uncovering, documenting, preserving, and disseminating the history and the legacies of the Williamsburg Bray School. We host a monthly series on Zoom in order to share recent genealogical findings, engage the descendant community in this work in order to broaden our understanding of the legacies, and enlist the help of historians, genealogists, as well as the general public in furthering the conversations and the research surrounding the Williamsburg Bray School. The title of the monthly series is Bray School Stories. This evening's focus is Seeking Mary and Elisha Jones. So first, some housekeeping items, especially for those who have just joined in. We are recording the session. It will be available later on our YouTube channel. To find it, simply Google Bray School Lab YouTube. If you prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to access this later from our YouTube channel. The monthly sessions are designed to spark conversation. I will share a slide and some information, and then we can take some questions and invite you to share your thoughts and comments. Now, that's our usual way of doing things, but tonight we have two very special guests who are going to be speaking, and so I'm going to introduce them separately. They're going to each have a turn to kind of share their family stories, their family history, and so we'll do it just a little differently this evening. But questions, of course, can always be placed in the chat, and towards the end of this evening, you can raise your hand to ask a question as well. And so I am so pleased that we have a number of people joining us this evening who descend from the Jones family. So I invite you to turn your camera on and unmute yourselves and introduce yourself to the group, if you so choose.
Well, I will go first. Hopefully you guys can see and hear me okay. My name is Curtis Corbett. My mother is the Jones. We are from East Williamsburg. Right before you get to Cheetah Mannix. Her parents, her father was Alexander Jones. Grandfather was Israel Jones, and so on, and all the way back to what we'll talk about here. Without going into too much, I think you're gonna give me some time to talk later anyway. So,
Thanks, Curtis. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Nice to meet you, Curtis.
Likewise. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Swan Rochford, and I'm Colonel Lafayette Jones Jr.'s daughter, eldest daughter. And he is, or was, very instrumental in the dedication of the first free Black settlement, which is known as Freedom Park. He wrote a book about his great-great-grandfather, who actually would be James Jones, who was a student at the Bray School. And from the information that Dad shared with me and looking at the timeline, I'm pretty sure that James Jones is one of the first people to settle there. At that time was called Hot Water and now known as Freedom Park. And so that is what happened to James Jones when he grew up. And I saw that Elizabeth had sent an email, and it said that when in the census of 1850, he was 47 years old. So that means when that census was taken, he was actually living at Hot Water, which is now Freedom Park.
Perfect. Thank you, Swan, and we're looking forward to what you're going to be sharing with us this evening. So speaking of sharing, let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will go ahead and get started. So a couple of things we want to first mention is, let's see if I can get this slideshow going. And we'll go from current slide. So certainly have been talking about this, and the dedication ceremony is going to be held this Friday, November 1st, on the lawn of the art museums. The top picture is that iconic photograph taken from the 1920s of the house that has been established as the Williamsburg Bray School. The picture below is a photograph I just took last week. So that's that's what it was looking like as of then, but I know that they are still, I saw that there was a light fixture on the outside as I was leaving the office this evening. So they're still working on that, getting that ready. We'll have a number of speakers. Colonial Williamsburg is putting on just a wonderful event for everyone, free and open to the public. So speakers, especially Secretary Lonnie Bunch from the Smithsonian is going to be one of the keynote speakers. Also, there will be a reception, art projects, entertainment, and some panel discussions. And so just want to make sure and bring that to everyone's attention if you happen to be in town and would like to be a part of what's going to be a very special day. The other thing that we are thrilled to announce is that we have published a book. Colonial Williamsburg, in partnership with the William and Mary Bray School Lab, has worked tirelessly to get this book out as soon as possible before the holidays. The book is entitled The Williamsburg Bray School, A History Through Records, Reflection, and Rediscovery. It was co-edited by Dr. Maureen Elgersman Lee, the director of the William and Mary Bray School Lab, and Nicole Brown, who is the graduate assistant in the lab, as well as a PhD student at William and Mary, and is a historic interpreter at Colonial Williamsburg, portraying the teacher of the Williamsburg Bray School, Ann Wager. So, but what's really amazing about this book, it's a number of essays. I think it's 35 essays, if I remember correctly. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I know we're going to talk about that in the coming weeks. But half of the essays were written by members of the descendant community. And that's really what this collaboration and this project is all about. And so we really wanted to make sure that this was a huge partnership effort. And so among the essayists are Jones family descendants. So it's available for pre-order right now. It's expected to ship on December 2nd. If you'd like to go ahead and place your order, you can use the QR code. That will take you to the shops at Colonial Williamsburg. But we're really excited about this book, about the way this book came together, and it really is a beautiful collaboration. So we'll talk a little bit more in the next few weeks about that book. But let's get it started on this evening's program about seeking Mary and Elisha. Now, last March, we started to look a little bit at them, and we're kind of doing another kind of look-see this evening, especially with the help of Swan and with Curtis. So where we begin is where we always begin, with the names on the list. We have Mary Jones and we have Elisha Jones. They are marked as free children. Now, the 1762 attendance list is the one list of the three that we have that lists the ages of the students, with the glaring exception of Mary and Elisha Jones. We know from looking at this list that the children range in ages between 3 and 10. So we estimate that Mary and Elisha were probably somewhere between those ages. But again, when we talk about kind of the historical archive, and we talk about the silences in the archive, this is kind of what we're talking about, that sometimes the records aren't as complete as we wish that they could be, that we had hoped that they would be. But this is where we start. We start with the attendance list in 1762. And then where do we go? Well, as Swan mentioned, this book, My Great-Great-Grandfather's Journey to an Island of Freedom by Colonel Lafayette Jones. This has been instrumental, and I do want to acknowledge the work of oral history and oral historians. Without this book, and without the oral histories that have been given by descendant community members, All credit goes to Tanya Meredith for pulling all of these oral histories together and conducting these interviews over the last 18 months. We wouldn't be able to do this work as well. We wouldn't be able to do this work as correctly. We wouldn't be able to do this work as efficiently without the oral histories that have been shared with us. So the genealogy and the oral history really do work very much hand in hand. And so the two quotes that we pull from Colonel Lafayette Jones's book is that some members of the Jones family attended this school and later became residents of the hot water settlement. And then he said, my grandfather said that some of the children who had attended the Bray School were able to read and write, and we referred to many as the first Black teachers in Virginia. This is especially true of the Ashby and Jones children who taught members of their families to read, write, and cipher. And we know that, we know from the records of the Williamsburg Bray School, the Bray Associates correspondence, we know that reading was certainly part of the curriculum. We know that ciphering was part of the curriculum. And so here we have evidence of, and we also know that it was expected that the children were to go return to their families, return to the households, and really spread that education that they were getting. And here's clear evidence that that's what it was happening. So we also want to acknowledge Paul Heinig's work. Paul Heinig worked pulling out any information he could find with regard to free African Americans. This volume is from North Carolina, Virginia, and South Carolina. And so we have Jones family entries in there as well. And so these two books have been really helpful looking at Jones family records. So we talk a little bit about the importance of place and where we find people in the landscape. And again, this is also going to go back to that oral history piece as well. I'm going to actually start on the right with the Skimino community area. Michael Druitt in his oral history, and again at his presentation this week at the Slate Seminar, mentioned that his Jones family really came from the Skimino community. And Skimino is on the York River, northwest of Williamsburg. And this is just a Google map, and just kind of did a screenshot so we could just kind of ground ourselves on where that location is. To the left of that map is an 1863 map. This is also in the York River, but this is a little bit farther east between Yorktown and Queens Creek. And this area will become the reservation. And the reservation was a community of free African Americans, and they lived and had industry, they had churches, they had schools, homes, farms, and they had cemeteries there as well. And in 1918, the community was displaced in order to what's now current day, the Naval Weapons Station of Yorktown. But this is that area that Curtis was talking about where where part of his family is from. The lower map, the brownish map, is also from 1863. And this is an area in James City County. So we have some York County, we have Joneses in York County, and then we have Jones family members in James City County. And this is the area that Swan was mentioning. This is north and west of Williamsburg near Centerville Road. This 1863 map was made by, was surveyed by Confederate General J.F. Gilmore. And in it, he wrote, and this is just a very small section of a much larger map, but I wanted to make sure that we were kind of focused on this area. He marks this one little area, free Negro settlement, full of cabins and paths. So around that, you also see some other black dots and you see some names associated. Do you notice the other names that surround this land? Some of us were talking on Saturday about Richardson is nearby. But I also want to point out the places that are simply marked as Negro. And I should have said at the beginning of this that some of this terminology is way outdated, that, and I should have mentioned that, when we're looking at the records, we can't change the records. This is the way they were. And so for the historic value, we keep that old outdated language. So just to be warned that some of this language, a lot of that language is racist and uncomfortable, and hopefully not much nowadays. But just to be aware that we're going to see some of that in the records. But there are 6 spots that are listed as Negro. And when we talk about archival silences, this is what we mean. They know that the people were there, but the person creating this record left out their names. And was that because he didn't bother to find out who lived on those places? Is it that they weren't of as much value as he thought in his world to make notations of their names? But this is what we're up against when we are looking into doing family history research. The names on those places really could help family historians find their people, find that connection to that place in that time. And so we know and we acknowledge that the people were there, and what we're working towards is figuring out if we can figure out who they were and what their lives were like. So we want to acknowledge the fact that we know that they were there. And we also acknowledge that their names are not mentioned on this map. So all of that is just to kind of set us up for having Swan and having Curtis share a bit of their family stories. Now, as Swan talked about her family lineage, this is just a very small kind of one line back to James Jones. And James Jones, we see in the 1850 census. He's there with his wife, Sarah, and then his children, McManners and Hartman, James, Allen, John, Wilmer, and then also a young woman by the name of Rebecca Grandison is in the household. This is from the 1850 census. So they were free people of color living in James City County. And the other part I wanted to show was the 1836 personal property tax list, because in those tax lists, free people of color and their entire households were actually named in the record. And here we have James Jones with wife Anna, and sometimes Sarah and Anna, Anna and Sarah are used sometimes interchangeably. But the big clue that we're looking at the right place is that first child, McManners, who's 1 year old. McManners is kind of an unusual name that really helps us make sure that we know that we're looking at the right family. There's a lot more records connecting Swan and all of these people in her family, but I really wanted to give her a chance to talk about this and not go through loads and loads of records. So I'm going to stop sharing for right now and ask Swan to come on in and share. Unless you'd like me to keep this up, Swan, I can keep that up if you'd like.
Wow, I'm so moved by this, and this is just so amazing to look at, and I just want to thank you for this. This is just absolutely amazing. I just wanted to add that, yes, James Jones, there he is, 47 years old, and I believe 1803 is when he went and settled at the Free Black Settlement. And I'm looking at his children's names, and if you look at John, and I believe that's supposed to be a T because that stands for John Thomas,
Okay.
is what my father told me. John Thomas Jones, 5 years old right there, grew up there at the free settlement, and at the age of 22, enlisted in the 2nd Colored Cavalry in the Civil War and fought as a free Black man at 22 years old. And so just looking at this is just amazing. And in my dad's book, he actually has a picture of Wilmore. And yeah, he has a picture of Wilmore in his book. this is just amazing. And so John T. Jones is actually the father of George A. Jones, who is was the person who shared all the family oral history and everything about the free black settlement with my dad, because George A. Jones lived to be 104 years old. He was born in, I believe, like 1870. Um, and so he knew where the settlement was. He shared it with my dad, and my dad is the one who went to the county, and the rest is a part of Williamsburg history. So this is amazing.
I should have had the census where George Jones is listed and his age. That would have been good too. To have.
Absolutely. And another thing is we might want to look at James Jones. I'm not sure how old he was when he passed. He may or may not be buried there at Freedom Park in the cemetery there. I'm not sure if there's records of the people buried there, but
We can definitely we can.
I'm gonna guess he would have been like 62 years old by the time,
Okay.
1865.
Okay.
So that's
And that's
something
when
we
he
may want
passed,
to look at.
was
I'm not
1865.
I'm not sure when he passed.
Okay.
That's a big question. Yeah, when did James Jones pass?
Okay.
And another thing is, I recall my dad probably has a picture of James Jones as an adult, because I remember him showing me a picture, and we were saying, wow, he looks just like you, Dad, but wearing 1700s clothing, and he was dressed very, very nice. And
Wow.
so this is something I need to talk to my family about. What is in Dad's records?
Right.
Because he
Right.
just passed in February, so
And we
it's
are so sorry about that. That was such a huge loss, certainly for your family, but also for the community.
oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I mean, he would just be so amazed by all this, because this is just everything that he spoke of and put in his book. And I remember when he wrote his book, that's what he said. He said, I'm going to write a little book, and it's not going to be very big, he said, but it's going to have a lot of information in it.
It does. It does. And the oral histories that he did to just have those other voices be a part of the book is just incredible.
Oh,
So,
yes. And he was just so humble and just so soft-spoken about it, but so dedicated to this. I mean, this
right,
this was everything for him.
right, right.
I really appreciate everything y'all do there.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you sharing. This is not easy to come and talk about, family stuff, and certainly appreciate it.
This is just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're
So happy to be a
welcome.
part of this.
Good. Well, if you think of, I mean, you're welcome to keep talking if you'd like. I'm happy to cede the floor to you. But if you
Oh no,
wanted to,
I'm good. I'm
you're
good.
good.
Thank you for the time. Yes.
Okay, terrific, terrific. Um, Let me go ahead on to the next slide. And this is what I've been working on with Curtis and his family. And it's funny, there's so many more records that we've been able to uncover, both for Swan and also for Curtis. I was talking with someone at the Slate seminar, and I said, I want to put, all these records in. And she's like, sometimes it's overwhelming when you put that many records in. And I said, I know. I said, I get that. And she said, you may want to pull back a bit. And I said, right. I said, I get that. And I said, my whole kind of MO is that, pushing back against this notion that there are no records for African American research, that they just don't exist. And so me putting as many records as I can, just kind of pushing against that notion. So for Curtis and for Swan, I kind of kept it low, and just two key documents that I wanted to be able to share. So for Curtis, as he said, he goes back to, through his mother's line, back to Peyton Jones. And what we see in the 1900 census is Peyton Jones and his family with his wife Sarah and their children. The 1900 census is so key because we get the birth month and birth year for people listed in the census. They did it again, I think, in 1910, but not every census is asking the same questions. Not every census record has the same information. It just depends on what people wanted to, what the government wanted to know at that census year. And then we were able to find Peyton Jones's death certificate, which lists his parents, Ishmael Jones, born in York County, and Lillian James, also born in York County. And so, Curtis, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you if you'd like to kind of tell us about your family history research, stories that your family shared with you. Take it away.
Sure, I would absolutely love to. It is an honor and a pleasure, and I must share with the group that I grew up on and in a 100-year-old house that my grandfather actually grew up in himself. And in my backyard, just 100 yards away, was a house that he built for his family as his lineage as a World War II vet. His father was a World War I vet. And next to me was his brother, Uncle Lawrence. So well, growing up, my grandfather was in my backyard and his brother was next door to me. And this whole land that I grew up on, the house next to me was owned by us as well. And some of the land was bought from Cheetah Mannix, and some of the land was bought by Kings Creek. And my mother still lives in the house that my grandfather grew up in, that I lived the history. I lived it. And it is an honor and a pleasure to actually, have someone that's actually, interested in the group and the history, because I've always known there's history here. And if you come here, there is a tree that I say knows more than we'll ever know. Literally, I call it the tree of life. So you always see the picture of the tree of life. It literally looks like the tree of life. I can't grab the trunk. So I know it's been here since before, we could think of as relatively as these days and things. And there's a old South Magnolia over here, and just being able to grow up knowing that it's the lineage of my family that we have continued to progress and grow. And my grandparents and great grandparents, served. And my mother is a preschool education major, and that has instilled education in me. So it's almost like, to me, the lineage and things have passed on intrinsically, whether or not anything was necessarily told to me or my mother for that matter, just for the fact that we lived it and we loved it. And I'm thankful and grateful for the people that have come before me that have set this, in place. And it really, one of the biggest things that we are looking for as a family, I really, we all wish we had to talk to our grands and great grands when we had the chance, right? But nonetheless, it's really curious to me how they had the reservation, and then we have Jones Pond that's right back up against the property here, all this Jones, and where the connection would be to the other Jones, because we're literally a stone's throw away. And how and can we make, those connections? Because it's like I've talked about with Tanya and yourself and all the things about how we are likely all siblings of siblings that are just living in different parts of the area, and to still have this land that belongs to us is an honor, I believe, you know.
I love that. That's incredible. That's incredible. I love what you said about the tree. And I've heard tree of life, but I've also heard witness tree, the trees that were
Yeah,
witnessed.
I say it's seen some things. I do. I say that tree has definitely seen some things. That tree has definitely seen some things. I'll bring you a picture this week.
Okay, terrific.
When I come, I'll bring you a picture of it, and you'll literally it's a matter of fact, I would actually invite you down here to take a look at it. It is I'm 6'4", 200 some pounds, and I can't put my arms around it. And
Amazing.
the fact that it was 20 some acres when I was a child. So it was closer to 40 or 100 in the days before that.
Right,
You know,
right.
my grandfather built the house on, and there's Jones Drive. It's a dirt road that my grandfather built his house on. And they were the only ones on a dirt road, and it was just a dirt road. And now it's Jones Drive because they were the only ones on it, and they stuck a house on it, and because it was our land, and that's just what we did.
Amazing. You've given me a good idea that the land records and the deeds are going to be the place to go next to really dive into your family. We've kind of
They
exhausted a
really
lot
are.
of the tax records and the census records and some of the marriage and death records that we've been kind of sharing back and forth. But I think those deeds, the land records, are going to be the next key.
We do still get a piece of mail from, I believe it's Israel. It's either Israel or Ishmael. I believe it's Israel. We still do get a piece of mail for like a little chunk of land that's left that didn't get sold whenever all the things have happened, like around the corner on Springfield Road. So we still
Really?
do get a piece of mail with his name on it, and some of us are paying the bill, randomly kind of thing, because like me and some of the other family. But nonetheless, he's still on the books over there.
Wow. All right, we're definitely going to have some more conversations in the office. This is incredible. Thanks. Oh my
Thank
goodness.
you so much.
So so I've got a few slides that we can look at. I definitely want to make sure that we leave time for questions, especially if people have questions for Swan or for Curtis. Anything at this point that the group is kind of curious about before we go on? So I'm looking through the chat. Nora Adkins Jones was married to Lafayette Sr. Yes, we can make that connection. Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Welcome. Welcome back to Bray School Stories. Okay, love that Michael Druitt is your fourth cousin. Fantastic. This is lovely. So who was Lafayette Jones Sr.'s spouse? Let me go back a slide. And Swan, you might need to kind of maybe help with that because I don't think I have it with me on this slide. Swan, do you remember your grandmother, your dad's mother?
Yeah, she was an Adkins before she was a Jones. She was Nora Adkins Jones.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay.
And she's up in Charles City with the Joneses.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So we're going to just do a little bit of a kind of overview of where other records we've been looking for, trying to make those connections between Mary and Elisha to Living Jones descendants now. Normally, we would look in the early census records, but as we mentioned last month, the 1790 federal census for Virginia no longer exists. The 1800 census for York County and James City County no longer exists, and certainly James City County 1810 federal census. So that's not really going to help us. Personal property tax lists, though, are very helpful. And we know that we're looking for Jones family members in York County as well as James City County. So we're tracking both of those. And then as Colette Roots just mentioned, Charles City County is the next one we need to kind of look at, as well as Surrey. Just haven't gotten there quite yet. So for 1782 in James City County in Blissland Parish, we have a James Jones, a Sarah Jones, a John Jones, and an Elsie Jones. There's some debate whether Elisha is Elisha male after the biblical figure, or Elisha a female, and could Elsie be a derivative of Elisha? Not really sure at this point, but certainly keeping all doors open at this point. York County, we have two Joneses, Erasmus Jones and Dudley Jones. That's 1782. Okay, so 1782, just to remind ourselves, that's 20 years after Elisha and Mary attended the Williamsburg Bray School. So we would be looking for adults at this point, but we just haven't found them quite yet in the records. And certainly if Mary marries and changes her surname, it's going to be even harder to track her, but we're not going to give up. So next thing we did was look into the baptism records. Just like we did with the Ashby lines last week, we kind of did a dive into the Bruton Parish baptism records, the early records. In March of 1767, John, son of James Jones, and Margaret, his wife, were listed as free mulattoes, and so that was his birth date. And then we have a Thomas, who's the son of a John and Mary Jones. And we don't know whether, that's 22 years after the Jones children were at the Bray School. The thing about the records that it doesn't seem to be very consistent with sometimes when race is indicated, even within the Bruton Parish Register. So for the first entry, we have 10 March 1749. This is also when that calendar changed. So they've listed it as in 1750 as well. We have Alexander, the son of a George Jones and a Margaret Macklin. The second entry said, born Alexander Macklin, son of George Jones and Margaret, his wife. We know within the African-American community that Macklin was a free people of color name. But in this record, race isn't mentioned. So could it just be that they just didn't mention it? Could it be that in 1749 they weren't distinguishing at that point? Or could we also be looking at white Joneses and white Macklins in the area? So I don't have really good answers for this right now, still investigating, but these are the types of questions that we would need to ask. So terrific. So I'm seeing some, Macklin. Okay, good. Excellent. Thanks, Curtis. So again, if we're looking in the Bruton Parish, which was, of course, Church of England, which was the church in town that everyone was attending, we're not finding Elisha, we're not finding Mary in there, but we know that there are free Jones families in the area beyond just the Bray School attendance list. We know this from the tax records, and we know this from the baptism records. The thing that also got a little complicated is there were two entries for enslaved Jones family members. In April of 1766, a grown man by the name of Richard Jones, belonging to Samuel Spur, was baptized. So this sends up kind of like little flags for me, because if we remember correctly, when we were talking last month, Samuel Spur was the enslaver of Mary and John Ashby and their mother Anne Ashby. So, and we know that the Jones and Ashby families are pretty well connected. They marry into each other, and they were both sending children to the Bray School. So who is this Richard Jones, and why is he enslaved versus Jones family members who we know are free at the same time? We also have an entry again in 1766 of a Mary Jones, the daughter of Martha, belonging to Robert Carter. And so we have to remember that 1760, make sure I get the date right, that 1762 slave law that said that the condition of the mother is then what the children then follow. So that means that if the mother is enslaved, her children are automatically going to be enslaved as well. If the mother is free, then the children will be free. And in 1662, let me make sure I get that right, 1662 Virginia slave law. And Maureen touched on this at the Slate seminar on Friday, that this was significant because up until that time, children had followed the condition of the father. And so in 1662, it changes, the Virginia colony changes the law. And so you can have, so we say, well, how can there be free Joneses and how can there be enslaved Joneses? Well, it depends on, you can have a Mr. Jones, you can have a male Jones who is having children with an enslaved woman, and his Jones children will have been enslaved, even though he himself is free. The other thing I wanted to be able to point out in these records is we see that surnames are being used for people who are enslaved. And not only that, we know that this Jones surname is being used, and it is not the name of their enslaver. And so a lot of people think when they're searching, particularly African-American lineage, that you have to look for the enslaver's last name to find the name of your enslaved ancestor. This is not always the case. And what's remarkable to me is that in this baptism record, a record that's being made by presumably a priest, a white priest, they are acknowledged, they know the last name of Richard and Mary, and they're even willing to include it in the record. And so just want to make sure that, we're kind of pointing that out, that we're kind of just acknowledging that that was happening, And so that definitely makes it easier for us to try and find more Jones family members. So, and as we mentioned, Joneses in marriage records, and this is that record in 1796 of Henry Ashby marrying Susanna Jones, and it's really hard to read, and I only transcribed a little bit of it, but this is a marriage bond and consent. In this case, no consent was needed because everybody was of age in the by 1796. But this is the marriage record. It begins with saying, "Know all men by these present that we, Henry Ashby and John Ashby, are held and firmly bound unto Robert Brooke, Esquire, Governor. $150 to be paid." This is if the bond is broken. And the second half, so this is dated the 13th day of January in 1796. And the bottom half of it reads, "The conditions of the above obligation is such that whereas there is a marriage intended shortly to be had and solemnized between Susanna Jones, spinster, and Henry Ashby, both of the county of James City. Now, if there be no lawful cause to obstruct the said marriage, then the above obligation to be void or else to remain in full force and virtue sealed and delivered, Henry Ashby, signed with his mark, and John Ashby." So we looked at a few other Jones entries, and in the cases that we were looking at, we couldn't distinguish whether or not they were free people of color Jones family members or white Jones family members. And so we still need to do a little bit more looking and really just kind of see where we can track the years and the Jones family members, and see if we can make some of those connections to be able to know which ones we're looking at in the record. So, any questions at this point? Any comments about the record or even just about the process of the search? No? Let's see. Good.
I'm just trying, Elizabeth, on with the Joneses and the Atkins, and with me and with Connie and Marion, being my genies, which is connecting the Joneses and the Atkins from the Brown and the Tyler line from Charles City. You got to remember when you're talking, that was before it was James City County and all of that. With me and Stephanie and Michael Druid and the Joneses family, when you're all talking about James City County, some of those people before they separated the counties moved. And it wasn't James City County, York County, and at that time, period. But when I'm looking at my DNA and Stephanie and Jeannie's, we have felt, because I'm Kent to Joneses on both sides, the Atkins and the Joneses and the Browns and the Tyler. On Daddy's side is the Marys, the Joneses and the Allens, and the names, the McClellan names coming up under my DNA. There's a lot. So it's a lot when you're talking about the Joneses. And we have found out that the Joneses, even though I have them on both sides with Stephanie and Connie and myself and John Ann and all of us talking, we have found out that when you're saying they were free and someone was enslaved, like you said, someone was the father, the mother might was enslaved. A lot of them own their own family, the Joneses did, that was enslaved. They own their own slaves to keep them from being sold. So I'm just suggesting that you all got to, if you don't leak that Charles City line, you're not going to find. And my grandfather was Elisha and Mary and Eli and Christopher. On Dad's side, they married Allen, which more on mama's side is the Atkins, all the Atkins ladies that you said, all the Atkins are half mulatto or they are Indian, African American.
Yeah, we know that Charles City County is on the list. Can you tell me the dates that the county lines changed?
I got to get with Stephanie and I got to get with the historian Mary and Connie. They will tell you it was in 16 and 17 and the early, because when they're saying we can't go back, we have been going back that far. And I'm amazed by how we going back with our DNA and by white cousins and Indians, have African American cousins showing up on our DNA. So I will find out for you. And I would definitely, the guy over Sari send us the map in the year before they divided these lines.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. Okay, Nora Adkins Jones was native German and Black, is what Swan has just posted in the chat. Thank you. This is going to be super helpful. And this is why we do these series, because I can't do it by myself. You all, I mean, the members of the community know your community, and as Curtis said, you know your history. And so working together, we're going to be able to really be able to hopefully connect back with all the records to the Bray School scholars and really know those legacies. And this is really exciting. Thank you all for sharing. I'm going to go ahead on. I want to be mindful of the time. Let's see. We will go quickly through. Free registers. We talked a little bit about this last month when we were talking about the Ashbys. We have to remember that in 1793 is when the state of Virginia required that people who were free people of color needed to register with the county courts and where they resided, and they had to carry their free papers with them at all times. This was absolutely a form of surveillance. And if they were not able to produce their papers, they did run the risk of being sold back into slavery or bound back into slavery. So these records were created very much with a surveillance and kind of keeping people in a second-class citizenship situation. For family historians and for genealogists, however, they are a gold mine. And so we're going to take what was bad and we're going to make something good out of it by using these to really help help with the genealogical research. The clerks were recording the names and the ages, what the people looked like, and whether the person had been emancipated or had been born free. And this page comes from the York County Records Project that transcribed those entries, and this is found at Rockefeller Library. And so, Curtis, we have an Ishmael Jones here in 1810. And this, I wrote this down, this gives him a, because of his age of when he registered, this gives him a birth year of circa 1789. If this is your Ishmael, he would have been approximately 66 years old when Peyton was born. So I'm wondering if perhaps this could have been a grandfather to your line. So we're going to investigate a little bit more. It is fortunate these records were transcribed, but I also want to make sure that you know what they look like in the records. And so this is the entry for Dicey Jones. She's one of the oldest ones listed, and so she registered with the clerk of court in 1809. She was approximately 60 years old at that time, which gives her a circa year of birth of 1749. So I just feel like we're getting there. We're getting close to that gap between when the Bray School students would have been being born and kind of bridging that time period that we just have a little bit of a gap in time on. So just wanted to make sure that when we're looking at a variety of records, you know, we just kind of keep the research going as expansive as we possibly can. The other thing, besides the free registers, in both York County and James City County, they made lists in the 1830s of, and this is where I mentioned with Swan's record, that they went through after the tax list had already been made. Right after that, they then made sure that they were making lists of the free people of color. And in a household, they also included the wife and the name of the wife, name of the children, and anybody else who was living in the household. And so for James City County, they did this for 1833, 34, and 35. Now, this is a gold mine again of some information, because it's not until the 1850 census that the population is going to see not only just the head of household's name, but the rest of the family. In 1830 census, 1820 census, 1840 census, you're going to get the head of the household and then tick marks for the ages of male and female in the household. But here we have, both in James City County and in York County, we have this little pocket of time where we get a glimpse of the community and where they're living and the land that they're living on. So for instance, we have a William Jones and his wife Juno. Their children, Jonathan, Pryor, William, Letty, Israel, Coatney, and Carrie. We know that there are 9 people in that household. We know his occupation. We also know that he is living on his own land. And again, this is 1835. We also have head of household who's a female, Sally Jones, and her children, Rebecca, Mary, Eliza, William, Jonathan, and Tom, and 3 grandchildren, Cornelius, Elizabeth, and Julian Jones. And she's living on Thomas Coleman's land. So with these records, combined with that 1863 record, where we only had an entry for Negro, can we place these people on that map? Can we make that connection and have a broader understanding of really what the community looked like in James City County at that time period, where you had the hot water track, which is eventually going to become Freedom Park that people visit nowadays? So that's, you know, people who know me and have been known this work know that I get a little jazzed about tax records, but that's because these are the little gold mines. These are just the little finds that you can find in those tax records. So And these are available on Family Search for free. And for York County records, they are available through the Library of Virginia online for free under their database, Virginia Untold. And I highly recommend that if you are looking for free people of color in that time frame in this area, go take a look at them. They're amazing to look at. So the family trees that we've so far been able to assemble for the Jones family, but it sounds like we've got some more people who have some Jones lineage. We've got James, born 1803, all the way to his 3 times great-granddaughter. And we have Ishmael Jones, born circa 1830, also to his 3 times great-grandchild, who both have joined us this evening. For me, the research questions remain. What happened to Elisha Jones, Bray School scholar? Are we going to be able to find him? Did Mary Jones marry, and what new surname might she have carried, and where can we find her? For Susanna Jones, who marries Henry Ashby, could we find out her parents' names? And could perhaps one of them be related to Elisha and Mary? And what other Jones records are still to be uncovered? Currently, up until about a couple hours ago, I was looking into the York County Judgment and Order books, volumes 6 to 7 for York County. And I came across an entry for an Ishmael in the late 1790s who was bound out. So I'm wondering if that's the same Ishmael that shows up in the free register, and then would have possibly connections to Curtis's line. So that's really what I have for this evening and for this session, but I'd really like to open it up for conversation. I can go ahead and stop sharing, and really wanted to make sure that we left a little bit of time for discussion, since you all have joined us this evening, and it's been so important and so wonderful to have you all here. So any questions, any comments?
I dropped it in the chat, but
Okay.
I don't know if you know about it, but there's on Colonial Parkway, behind my family's land, there's a pond called Jones Mill Pond that is it's in that same area. So I don't know where, and I don't know exactly where that got that, where Jones, the name and how that, came to be. But I do know that, if you go past, go down 199, you'll pass our land, you get on Parkway, and you go back up towards Yorktown, or Jamestown rather, because it's right behind us. But there's a Jones Mill Pond back there as well.
Okay. This is all really good information. So anybody from the community have an answer for Curtis?
If it's called Jones Mill Pond, that means all the Joneses was in that area. That's how they name things, like
Right.
Joneses and Cooks and Ashby's and Allen and all of that. So if it's called Jones Mill, that means it was more Joneses in that neighborhood than anybody. Even though it was other family, the last name Jones, it was more them than any other names. You understand what I'm saying? Like Cooktown was called Cooktown, Graystown was called Graystown. The Ashbys, it go by how many, even though we got different names in the neighborhood, but it go by the majority of the families that's there, and that's how Jones Mill Pond came. We also have a African American Jones Cemetery behind Berkeley Berkeley Junior High. That's right there behind the College of Women Mary. Nobody been back there yet, but they found it. So that's a Jones Cemetery also.
Terrific. Thank you, Colette. So I want to be mindful of everyone's time this evening. It is 7 o'clock. We've got a lot of activity coming up this week, but this has been a rich conversation. Any other last minute question, comment? I do appreciate you all being here this evening.
Curtis, call me.
I will. I promise. I promise. I promise. I promise.
And everyone look at the book of Negroes. my coworker has a tie to that area in the Bray School in Nova Scotia. So just by chance, make this real quick. I put it on our company chat that I was going to Williamsburg. I was celebrating my genealogy, my ancestors, and he came back and he was like, "Steph, we have to talk because I am a part of that group of Blacks free and enslaved that went to Nova Scotia, Canada, when Governor Dunmore, no connection to my name, um, had some of the people from that area, Blacks and enslaved and Indians and natives, fight on the British side. So I did see some people from Williamsburg, Charles City County, York County, Jamestown on that list. And it's downloadable. It's you can look at it on the Canada Library of Archives. You may find some people there. That's all I'm saying.
Certainly,
Stephanie, I
we'd love
re-
to, we'll take a
People.
look.
Yeah, Stephanie, I
Right.
really appreciate you bringing that up. We actually,
Okay.
and if Maureen wants to chime in on this, we actually have made contact with people in Nova Scotia. Our graduate assistant has been there now a couple of times and presented with the Black Loyalist Heritage Group.
Yes.
And we know there was a Bray School that was formed after the Revolutionary War in Nova Scotia. But if you have I don't know, are you local? I know you're coming in to celebrate, but we'd love to have a
Right.
meeting with you in the
Well,
office.
I'm down in DC. I'm going to try to get, because he was a part of the Loyalists. His family went back to Africa, to Sierra Leone, and
Okay,
formed Freetown there. And then he traveled. Now his family's back here in America, and he has DNA matches to some families in the Chesapeake area. So he's very interested. It was nothing but God that brought us together. And he really wants to be a part of this, but he has to work. And but he's excited to speak to everyone here about what he knows about the migration to Canada with
that's
the Free Blacks,
wonderful.
because he's a part of that family, a part of the Loyalists, yes, and the
Excellent.
founders of Freetown in
Terrific.
Sierra Leone. Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So do we have contact information? We do have your contact information. I at least have an email address for you. We can reach out
Yes, you
and,
do. Hmm.
okay, wonderful. Okay,
Absolutely.
terrific.
I'll call you, I promise.
Okay. Call me. We cousins.
You know it, you know it. I look forward to it.
Well, thank you
Okay.
so much. That's what these sessions are all about, is the sharing of information, the finding the connections, and just being really a part of this whole journey that we are calling the Williamsburg Bray School Story Project. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're so excited that you are a part of this. And we look forward to seeing as many of you as possible later this week for
I
all
will
the
be there.
festivities. Excellent, good, good. As far as Bray School Stories goes, we are going to take a little bit of a break in November, but we'll be back with a new session in December. It's going to be a little earlier in the month, but we're trying to thread that needle between accommodating the Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays. So please stay in touch with us for the latest news and happenings from the William and Mary Bray School Lab. And please be sure to check out our website and know that this evening's session has been recorded and will be up on the YouTube site. We have been affectionately calling 2024 the year of the Bray School. This week, it's all Bray School. And so we're excited for the opening ceremony later this week. Lots of excitement. And the work will continue even after the dedication ceremony. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and we're excited to dig into it and discover all new connections and all kinds of descendants to those students who attended the Williamsburg Bray School. Thank you all again for being here, and please have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much to Curtis and to Swan for sharing all of your family history that you have with us, for being a resource for me to reach out to and share documents and records and say, do I have this right? Really appreciate both of you so very, very much. And for all the descendant community members on this site, we couldn't do this work without you. Thank you for being here. And everybody have a great night.